It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. We've been discussing the Gordie Howe Bridge because for months, many of us have been excited about its opening. It's viewed as strengthening the connection between Canada and the U.S. as a way to make travel easier, cheaper, and as a win-win project that Canada paid for and is jointly owned by the country and our own. But President Donald Trump has tried to block the bridge's opening until Canada meets certain trade-related demands with the U.S. and compensates the U.S. for it, even though, again, Canada already paid for the bridge. Now, the bridge was set for a ribbon cutting tomorrow, and that's been delayed. Producer Sam Corey spoke with Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens yesterday before the ribbon cutting cancellation. In an email statement this morning, Mayor Dilkens said, quote, although we would all like the Gordie Howe International Bridge to open, Canada need not fall on bent knee to make it happen. Sam spoke to the mayor about the planned opening of the bridge and what it represents during a time of tension between the U.S. and Canada.
So this is a publicly owned bridge competing with the privately owned Ambassador Bridge. What is your reaction to the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge?
Well, listen, I can't wait for the Gordie Howe Bridge to open. It's a project that's been worked on jointly by two countries, a state and a province, and two cities for the better part of 25 years, from the time the conversation started, sort of post 9/11 until the day that it opens. It'll have been nearly 2.5 decades. And so I'm excited to see it open. Certainly, there's been a lot of trials and tribulations and twists and turns that have happened on both sides of the border over the course of that time period. And I think certainly as a mayor of the city who's lived here for my entire life and watched those things happen and have seen the bridge rise up out of the ground and then connect in the middle, I think I speak for the vast majority of our community who say we're just darn excited to be at this point in time to cut the ribbon and see the bridge open.
This is happening at a moment when many of your own residents are boycotting U.S. travel, promoting a Buy Canadian, Stay Canadian movement. At the same time, you're about to be more tightly connected to Detroit than ever before, as you were mentioning. Are you encouraging Windsorites to cross and spend more time in the city of Detroit?
No, I'm not. I still feel the same as I did, a year ago, where I don't want to be spending a lot of money in the United States at this particular point in time as a result of the posture by the president towards my country. And he continues to put the rhetoric out about the 51st state. But this bridge will transcend Donald Trump's presidency. It will transcend my time as mayor. This bridge will be here for more than a lifetime. And I think we have to look further ahead and be forward looking on this and not get caught up in the moment. So although I'm not interested in spending a lot of time and my own money in the United States at this particular point in time, I do recognize that we have created a joint economy and supply chains that are so tightly integrated that this bridge is going to help support the livelihoods of so many people. And that at a point in time when folks feel there is a comfort level crossing into the United States to spend more of their disposable income, this bridge will be there and be ready and able to help them. I think what you will find, though, is that beyond the commerce side, there is still a lot of excitement, people on both sides of the border wanting to use this bridge to cross either on foot or by bicycle, something we haven't been able to do for the better part of 50 years between our two cities. This will allow that opportunity just for a simple day trip or a few hours over to visit folks on the other side of the border.
I want to hold on President Donald Trump's posturing for a second. He does not want the bridge to open. He says he wants the U.S. to be compensated for the bridge, even though Canada paid for its construction. What do you make of his perspective?
Well, I mean, it doesn't meet the reality or the facts on the ground. And so the United States did not want to be part of sharing in the cost of construction of the bridge. And so Canada, as a country, as a nation, we bore the entire cost of construction and formed a partnership with the state of Michigan. And so the state of Michigan and the government of Canada are joint owners in this bridge. The cost of construction will be repaid through tolls over the course of many decades. It was $6.5 billion worth of construction. So it's going to take just that amount of time to collect the money to be able to repay the cost of the bridge. But moving forward, we will share jointly in the proceeds of the bridge. And so to suggest that somehow the United States was disadvantaged in the process, they chose not to be part of the funding of the bridge. And so it Donald Trump's comments really don't make any sense based on the facts in play.
Does any part of you think the bridge won't open this week?
I think that the president is volatile enough to be able to, suggest that he won't staff it, that he doesn't want to see it open. I think he said that. The White House certainly put a statement out saying that the president holds with his opinion in terms of the Gordie Howe Bridge. But the president is dealing with wars in Iran and high inflation and all sorts of other things that are going on that certainly are probably taking or ought to be taking more of his attention than the opening of a bridge that has been under construction for 8 years. That he said was a great asset in his first term as president. Don't forget, it was President Trump who was the president in office when the USMCA was renegotiated from NAFTA and said it was the best trade deal of all time. And so, it's at the end of the day, let's just look past Donald Trump. Let's look at what we've created here together, how it supports our economies. And I think we are going to be tightly integrated for a long time to come economically, but also, as two communities on either side of this wonderful border.
Yeah, I want to dive into the USMCA agreement, but first I want to discuss the larger relationship between Canada and America, which we've kind of been talking about. Last year, President Trump slapped tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. Canada retaliated with tariffs of its own. How have the tariffs impacted Canadian residents?
Well, the whole thing is just dumb. We have said from the very beginning that a tariff on Canada is simply a tax to American consumers. You see that playing out very prominently in the United States. You've had record high inflation here recently. Certainly gas prices are up. You see the price of vehicles averaging now $50,000 for the average price of a vehicle. It's unconscionable.
This is in Canada, or are you talking about in America?
I'm talking about in the United States. And of course, vehicles, same price here. I mean, they're very expensive. And we have inflationary impacts here as well that we're dealing with. And so I think we share the pain collectively because we've created supply chains where goods are made in Canada, goods are made in the United States, and they ship back and forth. And so this is all, in my mind, completely unnecessary. And I think the president, in some ways, is recognizing that what he has done is put an inflicted pain on his own residents, his own citizens, such that he is starting to look at all of the tariffs that apply to steel and steel components and starting to dial those back. In some cases, he's looking at where they're having the biggest impact, and he's starting to dial back on some of those. So he is acknowledging that this is not perfect and that he needs to make some changes as well, whether he will admit it or not. We see that playing out, and that's good news for consumers any way you look at it. At the end of the day, we still hold true to the fact that a tariff on Canada is simply a tax to U.S. consumers.
Well, I hear you. I'm curious where you see his positions maybe are changing, because I have not seen or read them.
Yeah, so if you just do a Google search on steel tariffs and Donald Trump dialing back the percentage on certain components, on certain elements made of steel that he has looked at, and he has said, okay, we're going to take the tariff off of those certain types of components. He started the process, and you know what, rightfully so. All that does is pass on extra cost to U.S. consumers at a time when just getting in the F-150 to get to the grocery store to buy really expensive ground beef, it's going to be a tough summer for a lot of consumers to even drive anywhere on vacation, much less have people over and have a big barbecue with ground beef. These are all costs and all pain inflicted by Donald Trump on his own citizens for no reason. And you know what? We'll see what price he has to pay at the midterms. I think U.S. residents will certainly be reflecting on their economic position when they go to the ballot box to vote.
I want to stay on the topic of trade. President Trump recently said he might not renew the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which is what you were talking about earlier. It's a free trade deal between the North American countries. Canadian officials have said they want it to be renewed. The three countries are set to extend the agreement on July 1st. Are you concerned that the agreement won't be renewed?
I'm not concerned. I think this is just another day of Donald Trump, posturing and saying things off, on a whim. And when I read precisely what he said is he might not renew it. If he doesn't renew it, just a lot more pain on U.S. consumers. That's simply what it will mean. A lot more pain on U.S. consumers in their pockets, in their wallets. And I have to think that the president is very sensitive to where he's at right now in terms of polls, in terms of the midterms approaching. I'm sure he's looking at a state like Michigan, which was a swing state that swung in favor of him in the last election, and doing the calculus on what he thinks he needs to do in order to, hold the majority in Congress. I think U.S. consumers are getting really concerned. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about, out there with respect to trade agreements and economics and what the economy is looking like and how much folks are paying for gas. And that, the U.S. consumers are very wise. Residents are very wise to look at, the economics of the situation, much of which the negative side has been brought on by their own president. And I'm sure they're going to reflect on that when they go to the ballot box.
The relationship, as we're talking about, between America and Canada has frayed because of President Trump's positions. I'm wondering if it's changed your relationship, if it's changed Windsor's relationship with the city of Detroit as well.
No, not at all. We love Americans. We don't hold any of this against Americans writ large. We know who's causing this pain. We know who to, assign blame to, if that's the right term. And we love Americans, and this will be, in the grand scheme of the world, this will be very short-lived. Although when you're in the middle of it, it feels very intense and it feels, uncomfortable and uncertain. But don't forget, there's just a couple of years, 2.5 years left. This is almost over, and we're very hopeful that when it is over, sensibility will return to the White House, and we'll find pathways to work more closely together. It's in our economic best interest to do that. And frankly, the trade agreements that we've had, whether it was a free trade agreement between the U.S. and Canada back in the 80s, whether it was the North American Free Trade Agreement where we added Mexico in the 90s, or the USMCA, they have proven to be successful and add to the GDP and create jobs in all three countries. And where we have points of friction in a very vast free trade relationship, there are dispute resolution mechanisms built into those agreements to be able to sort things out in a sensible way. And we've had disagreements in the past that we've used those dispute resolution mechanisms to try and put our cases forward. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but that there is a process to deal with that. And so the wholesale termination of a free trade agreement with your largest trading partner, or certainly one of your largest trading partners, the country that is directly next door to you and directly south of you, it makes no sense. We would rather build this fortress North America and create a great continental team here and a great continental union that actually enhances the trade agreement that we have with the United States and Mexico. We want to grow the pie, not find ways to shrink it and cause more chaos for residents.
If this weren't happening, would Canada be interested in more travel, more train travel, more connected travel between the two countries?
We are, and we're still working on that joint agreement with VIA and Amtrak to connect in Detroit and connect that link, that passenger link from Chicago through Detroit and into Windsor and then onward anywhere in the VIA system in Canada. So there are lots of things being worked on behind the scenes, and people, Americans and Canadians, working very well together. I'll tell you, from my perspective and the folks that I talk to in my own city, the most offensive thing that the president continues to say is he continues to say Canada is going to become the 51st state. And although we don't really believe that's going to happen anymore, it certainly is just a very offensive thing to lob at your your closest friend across the border. And it's the type of thing where, Canadians say, you know what, there's too much bluster, there's too much chaos there. If we're going to spend money, let's not support the guy that's, threatening us in some way. Let's go to Mexico, let's go to Portugal, let's go to Spain, let's go to anywhere else and spend our money other than the United States, because they don't want to be seen to be supporting that type of behavior, even though we know that it belongs to one person as opposed to Americans writ large. But what other way to express ourselves do we really have except with our own pocketbooks?
Do you then see this bridge, which is a growing opportunity for commerce, for travel, for people to connect from one side of the border to the other, as a chance to soften tensions that have hardened over the past couple of years?
I think, it's a great question. And I think this bridge is the ultimate symbol of connection. I mean, a literal symbol of connection, but the ultimate symbol of friendship. And in any normal time, the opening of a bridge like this one, which will be the busiest commercial land border crossing between our two countries the day that it opens, would be the type of event where you would have, in normal times, a president and a prime minister meeting in the middle to cut a ribbon, to shake hands and celebrate our binational relationship. Unfortunately, at this point in time, it's going to be a much different affair. And that's too bad. And I still remain hopeful. I remain optimistic that when we renegotiate an updated USMCA or whatever the next name of this trade agreement is, that we end up in a point where they want to actually sign that agreement on the bridge and celebrate the binational relationship that we've created. Certainly has put a lot of bread on a lot of tables in the United States and Canada and Mexico, and worked out well for the benefit of all three countries.
Drew Dilkins is the mayor of Windsor. He spoke with the Metro's Sam Corey. It's the Metro on WDET. So we've established the Gordie Howe Bridge isn't open yet. But the Community Benefits Plan has concluded. Next, a conversation with the Bridge Authority about that process. Stay with us.